I used to think I would do that for my mother, but it was the church that really gave me a way out of the violence at home. While Herman was in prison, I had become an altar boy at the church of San Francisco de Assisi, the last on the border of the barrios of La Libertad and Caicedo. It was by far the grandest building in our community, soaring over the small cement houses with a high arched doorway and a towering spire. Inside, it was cool and dark. Light filtered through the narrow windows and lace stripes across the pews. The altar, the confession booths. Ever since my first communion, I had loved the rituals and the activity of the church. As an altar boy, I helped the priests handling the tray of wafers and the chalice during communication. I liked being part of the drama and the holiness of the place. The priests were also good to me, especially the Spanish priest called Manolo. He opened up a new world of ideas for me and always had time to listen, to talk, and to ask about my family. I worked hard to win his approval and to become the finest altar boy in the parish. As soon as I was serving at every morning mass, as well as the Sunday evening mass. By 1996, I was 12 years old and looking for every opportunity to get away from Herman. Through the church, I joined a theater and dance group that put on shows in the barrio and thought this group and through this group I heard about a workshop on community leadership. I went along thinking it would be it would be for young people, but it turned out to be only kid there. It turned out to be I turned out to be the only kid there. Excuse me. I didn't care. I hung around because I'm always curious and wanted to know what they were up to. I just about fell over when they began to discuss violence in the home. It seems crazy, but I never knew that people talked about things like that. I thought Ave Maria because it was like coming to a place where people really understood what was happening to me. I thought this is exactly what I've been looking for because these people also talked about how we could change things for ourselves. It was like the perfect glove slipping onto my hand. It never bothered me that I was only 12 and they were adults. I never thought, oh, I can't do this because I am too young. I understood everything that they were saying and I knew right away that I could also be a community leader. The workshop was run by an organization called Corporación Regional. Over the next few months, I went to many more of their training sessions, and often I was the youngest in the room by almost a decade. They liked me coming along. I was like their mascot, and because of those sessions, I began to understand my mother better. I began to understand my own behavior at school better. Most of all, I realized that I did not have to be a victim. And mom was still beating me up sometimes, but I finally realized that he was doing that to me, but what he was doing to me was not my fault. I knew I could I knew I could overcome it and help other people do the same. I tried to help Maritza, who was also an altar girl at San Francisco de Asís. At first, she wouldn't listen to me. She cursed me and said some terrible things. It was hard, but I never let it stop me. Eventually, we were able to close the gap between us and to work together, first through the church and then with kids in the community. In June 1996, Alberto, who was one of the organizers of the Corporación Regional, called me urgently to the office. He introduced me to Oscar, who worked with the peace network called Red de Paz. They were both very excited. Oscar told me there's going to be this amazing election for children about their rights. children's a children's movement for peace has been formed. We've examined all of our records, and we're fighting out, and we're figuring out that you should be the procuradorcito of Antioquia. Oh my God, Antioquia. Excuse me. It's great, huh? Interesting book, man. I wasn't sure it was so great. A procurador is a lawyer or a solicitor who is concerned with civil war. Procuradorcito means little lawyer, and Antioquia is the name of our province, a huge place with millions of people. Oscar was telling me that I should be the little lawyer of this huge province. It seemed ridiculous. Then Oscar introduced me to a boy called Gustavo Adolfo, who he said he was the alcaldecito, little mayor, to Harry, who was the personerito, little representative. Fuck. And a girl called Diana, who was designated consejerita. Consejerita, so like little girl. He told us that the children's movement had the backing of some big organizations, and that the first activity would be a child's right election called the Children's Mandate. The next day, we went on a local television to explain all this to other younger people. At first, I was confused and thought they were manipulating me, but it began to make sense after we began teaching other kids about their rights. I worked in several schools in my own and other barrios. Groups of us ran recreational, theatrical, and artistic events to motivate the children to take part in the vote. Meanwhile, groups of semillero, or seedbeds for peace, sprang up all over the city. These were groups of children connected with the church, or with human rights organizations. They worked together to promote child rights and peace in their communities. On the day of the mandate, I went to Campo Pardes school to cast my vote and to choose the right to life. Afterwards, an argument broke out among several of us, which right was important, about which right was most important. Harry had chose the right to peace because he said there was no point in having a right to life if you couldn't live in peace. Gustavo Adolfo had chosen the right to justice because he said the lack of justice was the main reason for the war. But I told him, what's the point in having a right to peace or a right to justice if you're dead? I thought it was great that we had that kind of discussion. It showed how seriously we took the election. The turnout of Medellin was enormous. Almost every eligible child voted. Afterwards, I thought, what an amazing thing to have done. We have received a letter from one of the armed groups telling us that they shared our dream of a country where everyone would be treated with equality and live in freedom. They invited us to visit and talk about our work, but we never replied or took up the offer. 6 weeks later, I went to Bogota to take part in the first Children's Assembly. I met Farless, Juan Elias, Mayerli, and many other young people who were doing wonderful work for peace in their communities. It was a time of great hope, especially when the Citizens' Mandate also got such strong support. But after the mandates, things in Medellin seemed to stall. We had no regular source of information about what was happening in the children's movement in other parts of the country. So it was hard to keep that sense of unity. I continued working in my church and community and gradually realized that the experience was changing me. I felt stronger and more confident. By the age of 13, I had, I had begun advising women in my community who were victims of domestic violence. The adult workshops of the Corporación Regional had given me the information about the laws and organizations that protected and supported abused women. I passed this information on to one or two women in the barrio, and they spread the word. Soon others were seeking me out at the church, on the street, and at home. They trusted me at least partially because of my positions as altar boy. Many people in our neighborhood praised me and were grateful for the work I was doing. But at home, I got nothing but criticism. Some of my relatives called me names and told me I was ignorant and weird because I spent time with young children. I tried not to let it affect me, but it hurt that my own family didn't understand or value what I was doing.